the broker kicked me out and said, you know, those 97 listings that you have, we're going to take all of them and good luck. I started from absolute zero 3 times in my career, 3 times in 5 years. I was going to sink or swim, and I was going to do it my way. What I've learned as a coach, being in the right room for a lot of years around amazing operators like yourself, is everyone does it differently, and it works differently for everybody. I'm like, I need help. I need support. I need leverage. Knowledge is powerless until you put it to use. So the implementation of knowledge is where the power truly lies.
Welcome back to the Reside Platform podcast. I'm excited because we have the one and only Matt Smith, owner of the Matt Smith Real Estate Group, the #1 team in the state of Missouri. However you slice it, they sell hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes every year. We're talking like 600, 700 homes per year. He also is the podcast host of the All or Nothing podcast that I was on the other day. So check out that podcast. He's a contributor to the real estate industry. He's a thought leader. He's a trainer. And that's what I love about him, because we connect on the training level, on the agent level, and productivity level. And he's also a coach. And he coaches with John Sheplack, the Sheplack organization, just like myself over the years. So we have a lot to connect on, and we have a lot to talk about as we head into 2024. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Just glad to have the conversation, catch up with you, and hopefully share some value with your audience today.
So, you know, take us for the people that don't know you, right? Just give us a little elevator backstory on, you know, it says you started working out of your basement.
Yeah.
And then building a team. And you also have a interesting background in sales.
Sure.
You know, I think we that's where we connect, is talking sales and the language of sales and the art of sales and the science of sales. So I want people to understand that part of you too, because there was
Sure.
a lot to learn there, because that can be what you can learn from the podcast today can be transferred to your agents. So take us back to the basement.
Yeah. So I went from working from my basement. So I have so many stories, but to keep it brief here.
No, don't keep it brief.
So, man, I started my high school graduating class had 30 kids in it. Right. So I come from a very small town. We had 0 stoplights. I didn't know what real estate was. I come from very, very humble beginnings, much like yourself. Learned work ethic at a very early age. My very first job was stacking slabs at a sawmill for $20 per day. And learned a lot of lessons in that sawmill, and learned work ethic, number one. And then just a lot of lessons on, honestly, with no disrespect to those individuals, just what I didn't want in life. And it helped me see that I wanted more. And I didn't know what more was, but I just went on a journey to find more. And I stumbled across this sales job, that sales job, and ended up landing into real estate. My very first full year in real estate, I took off like a rocket. I was, Nick, you've heard this story before, but I was very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be a girl dad. My favorite job on the planet. I wear a lot of hats. My favorite hat to wear is being a dad. And when my first daughter was born, there's some complications. And there was a point in time where I just got my real estate license, and I was trying to get on my feet. We were 2 months behind our electric bill, had a newborn at home, just trying to get some traction in life. And I remember very clearly, I was carrying my 6-week-old baby into the hospital to go and visit her mom, because her mom had some complications in surgery. And there was a conversation with a surgeon at that point. And the conversation was something to the effect of, we have a problem. Your wife has 24 hours to live. We're going to dress you up and allow you to go in so you and your 6-week-old baby can go and tell your wife goodbye. Fortunately, she pulled through. Everything is, she's fully recovered. Everything's great now. I have 2 beautiful girls, same amazing wife. We're living the life beyond our wildest dreams. But that was my very first week in real estate. And so after the healing process went through, go back to the work ethic of the sawmill, I only knew one thing, and that is I have to get to work because I have a family to support. And so my very first full year in real estate, I sold 74 transactions as an individual agent. My very first full year, started growing a team from there. And through this journey, I've had to start over twice through real estate. So not only did I come from very tough times, 2 months behind on electric bill, medical bills, the whole nine. We pulled our way out of that, and then another life happens, and had hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from me from a broker. Started a team, got up to, again, got some traction in business. We had doubled our business 2 years in a row. We were selling 270, 280 transactions a year at this time, and hit our head in the ceiling. And the broker kicked me out and said, you know, those 97 listings that you have, we're going to take all of them and good luck. And so got kicked out, went to my basement. And that's
when you ended up in your basement.
That's where I was in my basement.
280 homes, everybody.
Yes.
Now he's in the basement.
And so started over. I tell everyone I started from absolute zero 3 times in my career, 3 times in 5 years.
Okay.
And
now you get in the basement. In the basement. What do you do now?
Just roll up the sleeves, man, get back to work. And start making phone calls, started getting listings, started having, at that point, all of the restrictions that I was under were off because I was on my own. Yes, it was in my basement, but I was on my own. And so I was going to sink or swim, and I was going to do it my way.
Was
right.
that independent brokerage at that time, or did you?
So I actually, I left a big name company at that point in time and partnered with a company called eXp Realty, which I'm still with today. And they allowed me to take the handcuffs off, the restrictions off, and just go and start growing a business and start running the business how I saw fit. And we doubled our business 3 years in a row, from out of the basement to where we are today. We are number 1 in the state of Missouri. We've been ranked as high as number 8 in the nation, according to Real Trends, and Inc. 5000 fastest growing company 3 years in a row. And just a lot of amazing, amazing lessons that I've learned along the way with a lot of great people like yourself that have contributed and helped me get to where I'm at today. And I think a lot of times, like team leaders like myself, we talk about our journeys. We talk about like where we have came from, what we've accomplished, but sometimes we don't talk enough about the people that have helped us get here. Right. And so I would be it would be disappointing to not talk about all the amazing people on my team that are still with me today that have helped me get here, that have helped build and contribute into this amazing machine of real estate business that we have today.
Well, let's do that. Actually, it's funny because I was thinking something similar.
Yeah,
I really was. And first, let's do that. So when you started your team from over the third time or the second time in your basement, what order did these people come into your life, and what impact did they make? What were their roles and responsibilities? I think a lot of teams struggle with this. Like what's the natural order of things, or what's the appropriate order of growth?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is a time it's not a cop-out. I will answer the question. But I believe the right answer is a theory that I've came up with and developed, is that what I've learned as a coach, being in the right rooms for a lot of years around amazing operators like yourself, is everyone does it differently and it works differently for everybody. And so there isn't a one size fits all. Everybody does it different. You and I run our businesses differently, but it works differently for us. And so I think trying to find that exact right fit, a lot of people get stuck there. They want it to be perfect. And so I will go through my journey of what I went through, but I would just use caution, use it as a guide of use your instinct, use your business acumen to build it how you want to build it and what you think from the knowledge that you've gained. And so, again, I think
there's also a nuance, Matt. If you could do it differently, how would that have changed in hindsight, or in today's marketplace? Because everyone listening, we have the privilege of working with other top teams through Reside and through coaching, so we get to see how they've done it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how I did it, my very first hire was an admin, right? Had hired an assistant. I literally was at one point, I was booked out 3 weeks. I remember having a conversation with the buyer, and they said, I want to go see ABC Street, whatever the house was. And I said, awesome. Let me pull up my calendar. And I said, I can show it 3 weeks from today at 6 p.m. And they're like, really? You're that far booked out? I said, yes, I'm sorry. I'm that fool. Right. That was what my schedule was as an individual agent at that point in time. Like they were so like blown away, and they were like, honestly, I didn't get the business because they went with someone else that was less busy, but it was a light bulb moment for me. I'm like, I need help. I need support. I need leverage. Because I was still at that point in time, man, I was stuck in that grind mode, right? Like I was in a deep, dark hole, and I had to work my way out of it. And so that's all I knew. And so the very first thing that I think most people should do is figure out what are the things that they are doing below their pay grade. And so when I say that, I don't mean that in a bad way, but what are the things that you are really good at? What are your core competencies? What do you really excel at? And what are the things that make you the most money and move the needle the most for your business? Now, focus on those things and then do a time study. What are you doing throughout the day? And what are the things that are below that bar? What are the things that you are doing that someone else can do so you can go do more of the things that make you more money, that you're better at, that you enjoy? And for me, I wanted to get face to face. I can sell, right? I need to talk to people. I need to be with people. I need to be showing property. I need to be on the phone with people. I need to be doing presentations, and someone else can handle the paperwork, the organization, all of that stuff so that I can go out and meet with more people and sell more real estate. And so I think the very first step needs to be an administrative task of some point. But I also think that a lot of people build a team because it's a cool thing to do, because it's sexy, because that's what everyone's doing now. And I've coached a lot of people that are in that struggle. They're in that messy middle of they're trying to get out of production as a team leader. And I've just learned, I used to think that my job as a coach is to get everyone out of production if that's what they want to do. But what I've changed to is, in this marketplace, getting out of production isn't for everyone. What if we can just keep you in production, but create more leverage in your life? Because you don't want to really get out of production. You just want to get your time back. And so how can we get you your time back? And so there's a lot that we can unpack there, but let's go back to my journey. I think that you need to hire an admin first, and then listings are leverage. And so what I did is I held the listings for the first 2 years. I was a listing agent, and I hired buyer's agents around me, right? Because listings create leverage. And so I think if you're looking to grow, if you want it, no matter where you're at, I think that's where you have to start.
Let's talk about this because, okay, if you have, and there's team leaders listening that are doing, they've already grown their team, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 agents.
Yep.
And their staff got really big. And I think we got to reflect on when were we at our leanest, when we were at our most profitable, when we were making our most money, right?
Yep.
And when were we growing? And I bet you it's back when you were doing the listings and you had buyer's agents and you had an admin. And I think I want to talk about the admin for a second because I am seeing teams start teams and they almost like forgot about the executive assistant hire, the administrative hire, and outsourced everything. Like I'll just outsource TCs and I'll just outsource my LCs, listing coordinations.
Yes.
And that's great because you don't have to hire somebody, but you're really passing the buck on your growth. I think you're limiting your growth.
Dude, so yeah, 100%. Like you and I are very similar page there. I think we've talked to some similar businesses and I think we've just both observed the same thing. Me personally, I did that, right? As things were so good for so long, I leveraged myself out of a job. My number one focus last year was I was getting back in the trenches. I was diving back into my business. I was more involved. That's still to this day. Right now, I am more involved in my business than I have been in 4 years. Today.
I'm with you. And so the administrative assistant, who was it? Or it doesn't matter who it is, but like, are they still with you? I'm curious.
He's still with me today.
He's still with you today.
Yep.
And what was his role at the beginning and how has that evolved? This is really interesting. This is really interesting because we always talk about agent retention. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your retention of your core of your administration, because as they grow, you grow.
Sure. And I think business is easy without the people. right? And so people come into play. And so I'm by no means perfect, and I'm learning this thing every single day, but you have to manage different people differently. And so let's talk about this first hire. The very first hire, the reason I hired this individual was because they were very, very persistent. And at the point in time, like I was just dug myself out of this hole, and like I was very protective of my money because I didn't have any before, right? And so when you're talking about hiring someone, as I'm in real estate agent, I'm making more, I paid more money my first year in taxes than I ever made in my entire life, right? Like that's the trajectory that I was on. And I'm sitting here with a little bit of money now that I'm getting myself out of this hole that I was in. And I'm like, I'm not ready to, I can't pay anyone. Like I'm not there yet. Right. And so that's the mode that I was in. And maybe someone listening is in that mode now. But what I realized was if I hire the right person, it helps create leverage for me. And so this individual was very persistent and kept following up and said, I see what you're doing online. I hear from all the reputation around town is that you are doing amazing things. You are doing things the right way. And I want something bigger and better in my life. And I want to be a part of what you're doing. And so finally, I gave in and went to lunch. And I said, all right, here's what I can afford. I can afford $1,500 a month. And you can come and you can shadow me and you can learn. But you're going to do this work, this work, this work, and this work. $1,500 a month, Nick.
Yeah.
He did that for 8 months.
Wow.
And then he became a buyer's agent. He recently was promoted to COO. He's been a top producer on my team year after year after year. He was promoted to COO in my organization. He decided that wasn't for him. He wanted to be an agent. He missed being an agent. So he's back being a top producing agent on my team. But I think it all started with hiring the right person that believed in the mission of what I was trying to accomplish and help me establish the foundation of my business, which is the core values, the why we are doing this. I think too many teams struggle with, they want to grow to grow. We were really focused on, we wanted to grow because we wanted to serve people at a higher level. What I experienced through my journey was that there was some people that were selling a lot of real estate that maybe or maybe didn't steal money from me multiple times, that were doing not always ethical business practices. And they were looking out at the bottom line instead of for the community, the agents, the people that worked for them. And there was a common theme in this workplace that everyone's replaceable. And I just disagree. And I think that people are your biggest asset. And I think that people are important. And I think that we are privileged in this business to be able to help people with the biggest purchase or sale of their life on a daily basis. And I think too many people take that for granted. At least I've experienced seeing that. And so that's where the mindset that I was in is that I'm come from very humble beginnings and I want to help people. And so having the right people in your corner help you with those values, with that mission, with those things to build the foundation of what you are building, I think is a very, very crucial step.
It is. And when I hire somebody as well, when it comes to operations too, it's like, how are they impacting the client experience? How are they, part of that impact purpose that we have to help people buy and sell homes and improve the quality of their lives versus how are they going to help my agents sell more homes?
Yep.
How are they going to, be a servant to all my agents, right? And now all of a sudden you got who's running the team. Well, the agents get to tell the staff what to do all of a sudden because the agents are the client. Like seriously, you'll have staff members that think the agents on your team are the client. Well, we're here to serve the agents. Well, yeah, you're here to help leverage and support so that they can fulfill the purpose. It's like I've been thinking about this, Matt. I heard this the other day is the metric can never become the goal. Right. The metric can never become the goal. Like, and this goes multiple across, like, the number of calls cannot be the goal. The goal is still to sell a home.
Sure.
And what's the ultimate goal? To impact someone's life. Right. And so it's the same thing that we're talking about. It's like the metric's not to support the agent. That's not the goal. I mean, that's the metric to support the agent, but that's not the goal. The goal is so that frees up the agent to sell a home and change a life. 100%. Right. So that's the leverage that we're ultimately.
Well, I want to add to that the client experience. Dude, that's something that as I'm diving back into our organization, that is my message loud and clear to
That's what
all of
you're
our
that's
operations.
what you're inspecting, right?
Yes. What is the experience of the clients that we are serving, right? Is it good enough, right? Is it like one of my favorite books on this is Customer Satisfaction is Worthless, Customer Loyalty is Priceless.
Mm.
We don't want to just satisfy them. We want to create loyalty. We want to go above and beyond and exceed their expectations. And I think if you just it's so easy in today's world, right? I'm very passionate about this. You go to a restaurant right now for lunch. If you had to rate your service on average from the waiter on a scale of 1 to 10 on the customer service, what would you rate it, Nick? What do you typically get at an average restaurant in today's society?
Oh, the service in my community, I would give it probably on average a 6.5. Good, good, average to above average.
Sure. What if Nick had a restaurant and his service was a 10 every single time? Would his parking lot always be full? Would you go back? Would you go there for lunch instead?
My prices would be actually. There's a couple restaurants in town.
Yep.
They have reservation only. They are packed.
Yep.
And you can't wait to go there. And they charge way more than anyone else, and you're happy to pay it.
But it's because of the experience.
And guess what? I tell everyone that comes into town to go there.
That's right. And if you're going somewhere and you want to go somewhere with an important client, you want to take your wife out to dinner.
That's the power of an exceptional experience, a 10 experience. Just thinking about that, I'm like, Matt, when you come into town, we're going to this restaurant.
So if you can do that, if you do that with something that we do each and every day, which is we eat at least 3 meals a day. Yeah. Everybody on the planet does. And if that has that big of an impact on your experience, a 10 out of 10 versus a 6 out of 10, what can we do when we are a part of a transaction that if we're lucky, they do it once every 5 years? The biggest purchase or sale of their life. Now, how can we take that 10 out of 10 experience and exceed that to the difference of a $50 lunch to a $500,000 home? And is our experience that we are delivering, is it living up to that expectation? And so that you want to know how to serve, so you mentioned a lot of operations or admin maybe think that they work for the agent.
And that's partly the leader's fault, the messaging fault. Yes. Yes.
100%. And I think that it's the mess to clear that message up is you are there to deliver a client experience. And if you deliver to the client an experience so exceptional, that gets that agent more business. Now, are you here to create leverage and opportunities and help create leverage for the agents? Absolutely. But your client is still the client, right? And I think there's a big nuance there.
And that's why I have some misgivings on outsourcing TCs and LCs and outsourcement.
100%.
Because I want to control the experience.
Yes.
Right. And they might be doing an awesome job, right? And they may be getting better, but they're not getting better to the benefit of my culture, and to my team. So
Nick, this is so good. So I want to share with you an idea that I'm rolling out right now.
Please.
I believe one of the themes that I'm sharing with my operations on this exact topic right now is a red carpet experience. And so much so that we just had a past client gala, and we invited our past clients exclusive only. And guess it was Gatsby themed, so everyone was dressed up, right? We had an old car that was there for like a show car. It was an amazing event. Well, when people walked in, the door was closed and it opened up. We had red carpet laid out for them, right? We just made that experience for the clients. And I gave a speech to my team and said, did you see how everyone reacted when we pulled those doors open? And they told me the emotions they saw, they witnessed, et cetera, right? As they were overwhelmed, they were excited, that they were joyous. They were like, wow, you guys did this for me. And I said, now how can we do that each and every day for the clients that we have the privilege of serving? Right? How can we deliver that red carpet experience? I have red carpet in my office right now that we are going to roll out for every client at closing, and they're going to walk in and get a red carpet experience for their closing. Right? Now maybe some people will say, Matt, that's over the top. Maybe it is. But I want them I had people.
And this is in Missouri, everybody. This is Missouri.
I had people at this client gala that were posting on social media, and they came up to me and they said, Matt, I had 3 friends call me and say, well, my realtor doesn't do that for me. And I said, well, they need a better realtor then, right? Like, and so like the power of this experience is so important. So I don't.
Now I had no idea we were going to talk about this, Matt, and that's why I love talking to you about this, because we could talk about just about anything in operations. Yep. Agent retention is a topic teams and brokerages talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can tell you this: if you want to retain your agent, deliver a client experience better than anywhere else. They'll be scared to leave you. Yes. Their agents will be scared to leave because they're like, well, if I leave, I can't actually serve the client the level that I think is possible. Like, how can you morally and ethically leave a team for another brokerage knowing that you're going to deliver a lesser experience? 100%. It doesn't make any sense. So what you're doing, Matt, and I've experienced this in my own business and through other people's business, is they're like, whoa, no. Well, when we list a home, we have better marketing, we have better photos, we have better experience, we get better results, right? So I'm going to stay. There's no discussion on split. There's no discussion on that. I mean, do you relate to that? I mean, it gives them purpose, because what I heard you say is you delivered an experience and then had a team meeting and discussed it.
Yes.
Talk to me about that team meeting. Like, how do you use that team meeting to build that momentum? And
well, Nick, you're a great leader, so you understand how this works, but it wasn't how a lot of people may think, right? All I did was facilitate. So I didn't come in and over talk and say, here's what I witnessed, here's what I observed. I just asked questions, and I sat back quietly and I asked leading questions to get them to go through the path of self-discovery, which is just a staple of leadership, right? You have to be able to know how to do that. And then when they are the ones saying the emotions they witness versus me saying it, and then they tell me the emotion, and then I ask a question like, and how do you feel, Nick? How do you feel that's going to impact your business in the future? Oh, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a game changer. I'm going to have all this repeat and referral business. And how does repeat and referral business make you feel, Nick? They're tying that all to this one experience, right? And everyone in the entire organization is witnessing this and hearing it. You want to talk about building culture. You want to talk about retaining agents. I saw one of our mutual good friends, John Jeplack, posted something he posted something recently, and he said something to the effect of, people don't leave or join a company based upon splits. They are looking for community. If you want a model that works, it is the leadership model. Become a better leader and work on your leadership skills. Work on building a community and a culture of like-minded individuals that have an experience like what I shared with you guys. Like that, if you're able to do that, I'm telling you, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what your splits are, but that's not the priority. Right? It's because of the experience in the community of like-minded people and the impact you are having on people's lives of why people join you and why people stay with you.
It's a fulfillment and purpose. And it's the same reason why that gentleman was willing to work with you for $1,500.
Yes.
Is he wanted to be part of whatever you were doing.
Yep.
That's why people love growth. They want to be part of something growing.
Here's a great story. So he was working at Walgreens as an assistant manager at that time. He hated his life. He was making, I don't know, 30 grand a year, right?
More than you were paying him.
Yes. So he took a significant pay cut. Less than 14 months later, he had made over 6 figures. And he has since then has not made less than 4 times that amount of income in a single year. 3 weeks into him getting this job with me for $1,500 a month, keep in mind, his mom came to me and said, with tears in her eyes, and said, I just want to say thank you for helping him find his path and his journey in life. I've never seen him happier. I've never seen him more passionate. The guy was making $1,500 a month. But we get stuck as leaders of, we got to have the best splits, and we got to have the best this, and we have to feature dump that. And it's the reality is, are those things important? Yes, but there's so much more to this than that.
There's so much more. In fact, I was reflecting on a lot of my interviews and selection process and hiring, and the people that stayed with me and that have the most passion and fulfillment. And a lot of people have taken jobs, I call them opportunities, and employment at our company, because it has a deeper purpose. Like I was able to frame it as you're making an impact, and we have a vision and a mission that we're going after. Tessa on my team, she was a director at YMCA, director role, one of the youngest directors they've ever had. And for whatever reason, she was really interested in real estate and probably took a pay cut, but I was also able to put her in a position where she was in an area that was a better seat on the bus, not to be cliche, but more passionate, more interaction with people. She's a listing coordinator and she wants to talk to the client. I think a lot of times we don't let them talk to the client. I think we want that. Or they want that too.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where to go with it, Matt. What other areas you're talking about red carpet? Let's talk about experience a little bit deeper, because this was a hot topic pre-COVID. Even 2015, 16, 17, 18, teams were really talking about client experience.
Sure.
Like when the agent sets an appointment at the office, you have a parking space, and I would even have teams that would have like a welcome Mr. and Mrs. Smith to the office. You make sure to tell your client, your receptionist, or like the person of first impressions. Remember that hire? The person of first impressions. The front is basically front desk.
Yeah.
They know that Matt's showing up, and so they can say their name when they walk in. They can greet them and seat them and treat them. That's what we used to have. Greet them, seat them, and treat them is what we'd say at our office. Immediately, and everyone's trained. Water, coffee, tea, stocked fridge, sit them down. Okay, so where can people make the most impact in the experience, I guess, is another question.
So all of that is great, and you should do it. And it should be over the top, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. Do it anyway. It's not about you. Get over yourself. Get over your ego. Train your people to get over the ego. It's about the client experience you are delivering. Again, we are privileged to be able to help them with the biggest purchase or sale of their lives. Let's treat it that way. But I think I'm going to go tactical here.
Please.
So all of that, 100% you should do. But I think there's a lot of gaps I've observed in my own business and in other people that I coach before and after this initial meeting that you just so eloquently laid out of how we should do the red carpet service. So let's say that we do the red carpet service, we do the meet, greet, and treat. We do that whole process, and then we get them under contract. This is where we drop the ball, because we think our job is done, wipe our hands of it. As long as we meet the deadlines, as long as we send them an email once a week, we're good. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to increase the trust and authority and value once you are under contract. Once they are working with you and they've agreed, how many buyers and sellers actually use the same agent again? Like, I don't know the stats, like 70% say they would, but
it's
like
dismal. It's dismal.
It's terrible. And I think it's because clients feel like once the sale is done, we're done with them. We got our money and we ran. And so what can we do once we get them under contract, once we meet, greet, and treat them? How can we enhance that experience? It is something very simple that everybody can do. We all have a smartphone. Take a video of yourself introducing them once a week, giving them an update. It can be simple as, hey, Nick, Matt Smith here. Looking forward to you guys closing next week. I just wanted to give you an update this week. Actually, I don't have any news, but no news is good news. But I wanted you to hear from me personally. I haven't forgotten about you. If you guys need anything, I'm here for you. Just that little touch. And it's a video. It's not a text message. It's not an email. It's not a phone call. It's a video text. And I think like there's so much that I could go into the science of why the video text is powerful, but people need to see your face and they want to feel important. And so just because there's no news doesn't mean you don't give them the no news. You still have to give them news.
Yeah, so start with the transaction piece, the contract to close experience. And I would tend to agree with her. If I would tend to agree, because we get so caught up in the speed to lead, the scripts, the dialogues, the closings. And what's cool about the contract to close is that's where you're going to retain that client for life. Number one,
Yes.
get reviews and get referrals. But it's also proven repeatable because it's usually a staff member that can do a lot of this stuff.
100%.
Right.
Which goes back to your outsourcing problem.
Yeah.
Right. How do you train that person if you're outsourcing it? It's virtually impossible.
And as a leader, watch your language. It's not we should do this. You know what you guys should do or what we should do. None of that. It's like, no, this is what we do. Day 7, you send out a message.
Yep.
And it's in an action plan. And also have a fail safe. I always like to have a plan B, like just in case my agent doesn't do it.
I call them safety nets.
I used to call it. Yeah, you have safety nets. Heck yeah, man. See, me and Matt. See, this is what happens when you're in a small market like us.
Well, and I think a lot of people may be hearing this. Like, you guys have an amazing podcast with amazing operators. People may be hearing this, being like, "Well, how's this really going to move the needle?" Let me tell you, in my small market, for the last 3 years in a row, over 350 sales per year come from people reaching out to us because of our reputation, because of a friend that said, I've heard great things. I want to work with you. How much different would your business be if half of your 350 or 400 sales a year were people that reached out to you and said, I want to work with you? That is the power of these little itty bitty hinges. It is these tiny hinges that swing big doors. Yes, I promise you, I can objection handle with the best of them. I can outscript a lot of people. I know sales dialogue. I know scripts. I know the language. I know how to lead generate. I know how to do all of those things. But if today we're talking about the client experience, anyone can do it.
And you can do it all right and lose them.
Yes.
Because your closing experience isn't set out. I was talking to Brittany Pino. Brittany Pino is a top operator. You know her very, very well. Your friend.
Yes, great.
John's wife, but also one of the best solo agents and the best team leaders on the planet.
Elite, man. Elite.
And she was telling me on her team, she says, once we go under listing, so a listing agreement, I think the listing agreement signed is just like the closing contract to close. Like you have to inspect that. What's that process like? Signed listing to going live to closed.
Yeah.
And she has a saying. She says she has these emails that go out. They're already pre-written emails that are basically frequently asked questions.
Sure.
Answer their question before they have the question. She goes, I don't want them calling and saying, do I get a copy of the appraisal?
Yes.
Because I already sent you that email that says, what happens next? Like they should know what happens next. So does that spur any thought?
Oh my God. Yeah. So we talked about it in our meeting today, right? Is anytime a client calls you, your first reaction should be, why did they call me? And how can I prevent it next time? Because we want to give them all the information where they are never, ever reaching out to us. We are proactive in our communication. What is the number one complaint about every salesperson on the planet, especially real estate agents? It's lack of communication. So why do we think our job as a salesperson, as a team leader with our agents, as a TC with the clients, you name any part of the transaction, we think our job is to answer the questions and we did good? No, answer the questions in advance. Just like Brittany Pino said, just like that example you just gave. So here's exactly how we're not perfect, but here's what we do. We say Nick's one of our clients and he calls into our TC or he asks a question via text or via email. We track that and we think, we say, is this common? And can we handle this in advance so that the next time Nick is under contract or his neighbor is under contract or whatever the next process is, that we handle that question before it comes up? And how much better would the sales process be if Nick didn't have to ask any questions because he knew exactly what to expect? I think it's deeper than that. How many people, when you're going to put yourself in a buyer's shoes, right? Like you're going to buy a vehicle. We've all bought vehicles before. We're going to buy a vehicle. A lot of us struggle with asking that salesperson or that dealership the question, and we ponder on it for days or weeks or sometimes months before we actually get the courage to ask the question we want to ask. And so think about that from the human behavior process for a minute. That person, Nick, in this case, is buying a home, and he's asking me a question. He's getting out of his comfort zone to ask me something he's uncomfortable asking because it's that important to him. He's probably pondered over it for 3 days before he's asked me anyway. And so me just answering that question with a surface level answer, it's not good enough. He deserves better. And so what if not only when I answer that question, I can answer it very eloquently, very detailed, where I go above and beyond and exceed his expectations of my answer, but what if I can provide an experience to answer that question before Nick has it? It's these little things that make all the difference.
Yeah, there's you talked about restaurants, and a popular book that's trending right now is Unreasonable Hospitality. I don't know if you put your hands on that one yet.
I haven't.
But back to the restaurant analogy. That's a book everyone should look at. Unreasonable Hospitality it's about the number one rated restaurant in the world. In the world, rated the number one restaurant in the world. We were talking Michelin stars, 3 stars, and it goes deep into the experience. And part of that experience is training the staff on how to deliver the experience. So what's the standard of the cutlery, the silverware? How do we polish it? And does it meet our specs and our standards? What is the menu like? And has everyone on the staff tasted that menu and know how to articulate the ingredients and what the chef is doing back there, right?
Yeah.
And so in order to do that, it's a teamwork, right? It's a briefing, it's a training, it's a debriefing to see how can we improve on the service from last night and where did we fall short. So how does that relate to, this is a tough question for you, Matt. How do you take that? Where are the similarities to that analogy to your team? Right? Because some of my best meetings ever are the ones where I'm actually diving deep into something very technical.
Yeah.
And where they really learn like, how do you answer that question? How do you answer that really real estate related question? And versus how do you overcome the objection on what I'm waiting because interest rates are high?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't really inspire my agents to get on the phone. But if I teach them how to talk to them about a low appraisal or a home inspection, I don't know, they're all ears. They're finally taking notes. I'm like, dang, you're going to take notes over that. So talk to me about your, how do you train? How do you brief and or anything like that? What I love about talking to you is I can just like throw something out there and see what you say.
Yeah. No, by the way, I did not have any clue what we're going to talk about today, but I love this. So the way that I think that I relate to that is it's so important. Part of your restaurant analogy is that everyone is on the same page. Everyone understands the recipe. Everyone knows the ingredients. Everyone knows what the special is for today, right?
Even the greeter, even the front desk person gets to taste the menu.
Yes. 100%. And I think it's so important that if you're going to do that at a restaurant, I think it's so important that when, again, we are in real estate, we are helping people with a very large, important purchase or sale of their life. Do you take the time to, number one, train, number two, skill build? There's a difference. And then 3, do you have accountability in place to ensure that those things are continually improving and evolving? And so I think to be honest, I don't think we have a training problem, Nick. This may be controversial for you because I know you're an amazing elite trainer, but I don't think we have a training problem.
I think we have a trainer problem.
Sure, we have a trainer problem. Sure, yes, but I think most agents are overtrained. I think most agents I need to know all of this information as an excuse to keep them from action. And I think what we really need to do is instill confidence, give them the borrowed belief that we as leaders have. And part of our training needs to be, how do I inspire and build belief in Nick? I need him to have the belief in himself that I have in him to make this next phone call, to overcome this next objection. Now, Are we going to be able to handle every single objection with a script? No, right? It's impossible. I'm learning something new each and every day in this business. It's always going to be evolving and changing. But what I do have is the confidence that I'm able to have a conversation with a human being that I will not get put in a corner because I know how to ask great questions. And I have the confidence that I will call anyone in front of anyone because I've done it enough times. And so, how can I give that belief to my agents? And how can I instill that? And I think it comes with, yes, training, but it's important to understand the mindset of it's not more information. If they learn more information, they attend more trainings, doesn't mean they learn more things.
How do you do that? How do you get that borrowed? I love that borrowed belief,
Mm-hmm.
right? Probably to pick up the phone and call people they've never talked to before.
Yes.
Fear, and that's fear. There's fear,
Sure.
anxiety,
Yep.
failure.
Number one, as a leader, you're doing it along beside them. I have a leadership principle that I live by. I will never ask you to do something that I'm not doing alongside of you or have not done multiple times over and over and over again.
And I'm sure you've told them that.
Yes. And I've done it with them, right? Like,
Yeah.
like I still to this day do it with them. And I think that's a part of it, right? Don't be the ivory tower leader, right? Don't sit there and say, hey, Nick, go make those phone calls, right? Let me make them with you. What is the problem? Let's listen to this phone call together. And it's coaching versus training. I'll go back to I went to a very, very small high school, graduating class of 30 kids.
I had 69, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's massive.
I doubled your class.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But on the wall, they said they had on the writing, it said knowledge is power. It was plastered everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And they were wrong. Knowledge is powerless until you put it to use. So the implementation of knowledge is where the power truly lies. And so that's why I think we overtrain people. We train and we train and we train and we train, but we don't instill action. And we don't watch our game film of that training and the action we took on that training to actually build the skills necessary to have that belief and confidence in ourselves to be able to do it again and again and again.
100%. I mean, I hope everyone's picking up that, and I know this to be true. What Matt is, the cadence and his tonality and his passion. This is exactly what he says to his team. I'm sure he tells his team he tells that story about his high school and the knowledge is power. And you might be thinking that sounds a little cliche. No. That's really empowering. It's really motivating. And I think as a leader, man, that's part of the reason you grew to the number one team in Missouri is your leadership and your ability to inspire your team to go out there and take action. Because they're going to walk out of that meeting going, yeah, or maybe that's a one-on-one.
Yeah.
Right. Or something like that.
Well, and I think it's so funny that you picked up on that because if you asked individually, if you would just corner everyone on my team and ask them, what does knowledge is power mean to you? Every one of them have heard it over and over and over again.
That's part of a good leader is repeating yourself and being okay with that repetition. I've met some leaders, so-called leaders that say this, I shouldn't have to tell them again.
Ooh.
Oh, right.
Ooh.
Oh, really? Oh,
man, I had a coaching call with an amazing lady leader today. And dude, being a coach, I love it, but sometimes it's tough. Like you got to cringe because you're like, I'm getting ready to drill them, right? Yeah, like I have to, I owe it to them. They hired me. They need this honesty, right? And so she was having a conversation about her agents, and she's like, well, they get confused with this and they get overwhelmed with that. And I said, awesome. And what does that mean? She's like, well, they just need to make more calls. I said, okay, let's go back to what you just said. And I repeated back, they need to do this. They need to do that. And I said, so whose fault is this? And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean? I said, and I repeated again. I said, if you had to pick, whose fault is this? She's like, well, no one's ever asked me that before. And I said, well, I did. Answer whose fault is it? Right? Like, because she was processing and she said, well, I guess it's mine. I said, awesome. Now that you said it's your fault, who has the power to fix it? Right? And she's like, well, I do. I said, awesome. So if everything is always your agent's fault, then you can't fix it. Quit giving away your power, right? I believe that as leaders, all of it is our responsibility and our fault, good or bad. right? And so I think that we have to be able to look in the mirror and say, how did I have an impact on this, and what can I do to adjust and change it differently?
This is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite Reside Platform podcasts. I can tell you why. Because I can riff with you on this stuff.
Yeah.
I hear this often. And I'm hearing this often from people, or I've heard it often over the years. And it's usually from teams that are struggling. Right. So
Always.
this isn't like something you want to model. If I could only get my agents to do X, or if I could, how do I get my agents to make more calls? Or it's all external, right? Oh, I just need some agents that want to work hard. It's like always this external excuse, and it sounds just like your agents that have you sound a lot like your agents. And so maybe they're modeling you.
100%.
And so you called them out on it. You're like, hey, so whose fault is that? That's brilliant. I wanted to, you reminded me of a story. When I was in flight training, in Daytona Beach, Florida, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, we had an MD-90 simulator. It's a level D simulator. This thing's like $20 million. It's like full motion. It's awesome. I had an instructor from US Airways. His name was Bob Stafford. And he was a great instructor. He was fantastic. And he would be in the simulator with you, and he would be there, and he had a presence. And the presence was one in which you may fail, but I'm going to be there when you do. And he actually had this thing, Matt, and I want to hit, this is the tender side of being a leader, right? Because oftentimes people, guys like us, gals like, just in terms of intensity, John Sheplack intensity, they don't know they don't know the compassionate side of it. Bob would say this. He goes, you're going into a check ride, and we're going to do emergency procedures. There's going to become a time where you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to get what we called in aviation task saturation. And when you have task saturation, your IQ drops to 0 and fear sets in and anger or whatever. And you're just overwhelmed, right? There's going to be a time this happens. And in an emergency situation, I need you to have clarity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my left hand on your right shoulder. And sure as you know what, Matt, I'm in the flight simulator and it's going, I'm doing awesome. But then I start getting overloaded, and then an engine fails, and then something else happens, and now I'm losing it. And he can tell. And all of a sudden I feel this hand on my shoulder. And it just grounded me, and everything slowed down. And I caught back up. I went back to my training. I did my checklist, and I landed the airplane, and I passed. He didn't have to give me instruction. He didn't have to tell me what to do. He didn't have to come in and save me. But I just remember that, like, that human touch. It was so powerful. I don't know why. I've never told that story before, Matt. But like, how do you create that environment of safety in an environment of intensity?
Well, I think, dude, that's such a great story. Like, there's so much there. Like, yes, the human touch is an important part, but I think
I'm not touching agents, but that's what he did.
It's the expectation that he set of you may get overwhelmed, and that's okay, because I'm here either way. And if you crash this plane, guess what? I'm still here with you.
It was also against the rules for him to tell me what to do. But if he touched me, it was a trigger. It was a pattern interrupt.
Yeah. So I think that it's,
what do you tell your agents about failure? And I mean, like failure, failure is good, blah, blah, blah. But what are you going to be judging them? Are you going to be ridiculing them? Are you going to be kicking them out?
I talk about failure daily, and I talk about my failures, right? Like, I think leadership is a language in its own, right? And I'm just now starting to be able to understand the language, right? Like, I've been in this foreign country forever, and I'm just now understanding the leadership language. And I think that there are some traits that are very important for a leader. You have to have humility, you have to have vulnerability, and you have to have transparency. Humility, vulnerability, transparency. And so, as an example, are you as a leader, are you vulnerable with your failures? Are you vulnerable with the things that you struggled with? If Nick is an agent on my team and he's scared to get in a prospecting hour, and he's nervous, he's got this fear that sets in, or whatever it is that agents are afraid of, guess what? I've had it too. And so how do I relate to Nick and give him my borrowed belief? And so I tell stories, right? One of my stories when agents are scared to get on the phone is I say, well, Nick, you may not believe this, but there was a time where I was scared to death to pick up the phone. And I tell a story. And one of the stories was my very first sales job. I would print off the list and I would go to my car and I'd go to Walmart parking lot and I'd go, you know how big Walmart parking lots are. I'd go to the very end and I'd look and make sure no one's looking, watching me. No one, because if anyone sees me, they can hear me, right? And so I knew I was going to mess it up. And so I went away from everyone and I started calling until I got comfortable enough to start doing it in front of other people. And so what is your version of Walmart? It's okay if you're not as comfortable as me on the phone. I've put in the reps over years. I don't expect you to. But guess what, Nick, if you crash that airplane, I'm here for you. It's okay. If you get hung up on, I'm here for you. I've been there too. Right. And I think just having those conversations and letting them know that you don't expect them to be perfect. But what I do expect is that if you mess up, you learn from it and move forward.
Yeah. The power of storytelling.
Yeah.
Is so huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like leaders listening to this is like, you need your toolbox of stories. And I'm sure your team has heard those stories and could tell them to other people. And and finishing your sentences, and we learned this from John Sheplack too, right? Like you've heard him say the same story over and over again, but it gets better. The same story gets better because you get better at
telling something new each time, right? Yeah. Like I could tell you 10 stories that John Sheplack has told me 10 times, but each time I hear it, I learn something new.
It's in the different moment. There's a time and a place for it. Now, this is off topic, but if you heard that ding ding ding, John Sheplack text came through, and he said something, and I think it's pretty cool, and I want to get your take on it, Matt. So this is totally off topic. John texted somebody. This is privately, and he says, he asks himself this question sometimes: do I leave open loops? And is there anything vague? Is there any vagueness in what I said?
Yes.
So John's reflecting on something, everybody, about his communication. If you know anything about John, he scrutinizes the words and the language he uses. And so what does that mean to you, John, Matt, in terms of, looking at what I wrote or the result I got or the action the agents are taking, reflecting on what was I vague?
Yes.
So talk to me about vagueness, which is the opposite. What's the opposite of vagueness? What's the opposite of being vague?
So it's one of my favorite words, and I learned it from one of my mentors, Ed Milet. Specificity. You have to be specific. And so, as an example, let's go back to my coaching call today. Whenever we were self-discovering the same exact scenario, and I said, well, do your agents know, are the expectations clear? I said, if you were to go to each one of your agents one by one, not in a group setting where someone can cheat off this person, and say, Nick, are you clear on what I expect from you today? What are the daily activities that I expect for you to do today? Are you specific? What exactly are those? And I think sometimes we just say, well, we need to do more. Well, more is not a number, right? It's just not, right? Like most people right now, it's the new year. There's people trying to get in shape, right? I did a podcast on my All or Nothing platform with Alec Cheplack, John's son, who is a health, wellness, fitness coach. And he says this all the time because I personally coach with him. He says, sometimes more isn't always better, but better is always better. Right. And I think so. What do people go wrong with their fitness? Where do people go wrong in real estate? We're vague, right? We leave open loops and we think their expectations that we have for them, that they understand those. And so it goes back to, I wrote this down when you started talking about this. This is a theme that as I'm in the trenches, getting back into my business, elbow deep, just rolling up my sleeves and getting to work. Clarity is kindness. Clarity is kindness. To be unclear is to be unkind. And so how I start a lot of these meetings is I'm diving back in. I've had some tough conversations, Nick. Like I've had some very, very tough, honest conversations. All of them, and me being very clear, they come back to me afterwards. They're tough to do. They're tough for me to say. They're tough for them to swallow. But each and every one of them have came back to me and thanked me. Some of them with tears in their eyes, because now they actually understand what's expected and they are on a trajectory to expand their career. They don't feel lost. They feel productive. The only thing that changed was I sat down with them and cared about them enough as a leader to be clear with them on what the expectations were.
So clear. And I always talk about being clear and concise.
Yes.
You know, because I like conciseness too, because
Sure.
the more mumble jumble, what John would say, word salad you put in there, the more likely you're going to confuse people.
Yes.
So you may have been clear in there. You may have been clear at one point, but it just got messy.
How many leaders use that as a sales tactic, right? To sound more eloquent, or they sound more like they'll pay me more if I sound better, right? Look at the actual performers, the elite people. They keep it clear and concise. I totally agree. Less is more.
Yeah, and people look to leaders for direction.
Yes.
And what to do. I think a lot of agents struggle because there's so much to do. They don't know what to do. What's the one thing to do? And then a leader can give them that clarity and specificity. Yeah. Thank you for that word. Well, Matt, people can follow you, I know for sure, on the All or Nothing podcast.
Yes, sir.
You can hear us talk about agent training like crazy before when we went deep into that. How else can people find you, send you referrals, reach out to you for coaching? How would you like Matt Smith to coach you one-on-one and get your
good news is that I actually just opened up 3 spots. So I do have 3 spots available for coaching. So if someone's interested, I'm looking for the right people. So would be honored to have a free discovery call if someone's interested. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. It's at Matt Smith EXP on Instagram, and just Matt Smith on Facebook. All or Nothing in Real Estate. That is my brand that you can find almost virtually anywhere. And I also think that, Nick, I was really thinking about, like, what is the value nugget that I could leave this conversation with? And I think that if we're having a leadership conversation today, and this just popped in my head, what do most leaders have in common right now that they're struggling with? And I think a lot of them would say that they struggle with the agents making the adjustments due to the activity that is required in this new marketplace, right? I think that is a huge, huge problem. And so if you're a leader that is listening that is struggling with that problem, I have the answer. I'm not perfect, but I know what the answer is. And the answer is you have to grow your organization from the bottom up. And the only way to do that is to do what our dear friend John Cheplack says, and recruiting solves all problems. And this is totally free, right? So full transparency, there is a pay forward version of this, but you can go and listen to a whole hour of me and John Cheplack breaking down 3 recruiting funnels that convert completely free. I give you my exact playbook, create over 7,000 recruiting hand raisers in my small marketplace, give you the exact playbook where you can go and you can implement it yourself. If you decide you want us to do it for you, there's a pay for play version. We can do it delivered, done for you. But go to 3recruitingfunnels.com and go check that out. And that will solve the problem that I believe most team leaders, probably all team leaders, are struggling with in this marketplace.
And we'll put the link in the show notes. Is it 3 spelled out?
Yes, 3 spelled out, 3recruitingfunnels.com.
I'll add to this. Okay, so Matt Smith, I know for a fact these funnels work because I asked Matt about it. His day in the life of an agent and the different recruiting funnels, and I've seen them in play. And what he's saying is, when you bring on someone new, you only need one person to do what you want them to do the actions required to succeed in today's marketplace, right? So Matt, if I brought in
one, it just
so that I'm excited. Actually, I'm bringing on in real time and space, right? January 4th to 2024. If you're listening to this, I'm bringing on 8 new agents, and it's like, oh, this is great, because what's the standard going to be? Standard is going to be what's required to be successful in today's marketplace, and I'm going to hold it to them. And when they do it, guess what? That everyone I'm going to grandstand them. We learned this from John, right? I'm going to
Yep.
grandstand them. I'm going to reward them. I'm going to acknowledge them, and we're going to build it from ground up.
And I think really quickly, and I break this down in that Zoom, that free Zoom.
Where's that Zoom at, by the way? Is it on your podcast?
No, so it's just on that
the
website. Yep.
It's on the website. Oh,
Yep.
Oh, check it out. Okay, we'll break it down. I mean,
so like so I think that if you are struggling right now with an agent to do the behaviors that are necessary to win in this marketplace, which I think a lot of leaders are, there are two options for you. Number one, you can beat your head against the wall trying to do the hardest thing that you can do as a leader, and that is convince a human being to change their behavior. You can do that. Let me know how that works for you. Or you can bring in new people in your organization with a new standard, with a new expectation, with a new hunger. You can find that one person that excels, that does the activity necessary. And then this other person you're beating your head against the wall with sees this new person winning. And they're like, wow, what are they doing differently than me? And now this person chooses to change their behavior versus you as a leader trying to force them to change their behavior.
Okay, I got to tell a story because Matt just inspires me to tell stories. I brought on a new agent a couple months ago. His name's Evan. And so I don't know if you saw the lawsuits, buyers, you see the NAR lawsuits. Okay. Well, in Washington State, January 1st, it is state law that you must have a buyer service agreement in writing prior to real estate services. Not at an offer, prior to real estate services. And this is from the state level. Okay. So it's not like, you need to get an agency or an agreement in writing. It's like, no, we got to have it in the file. Okay. So I brought on a guy 90 days ago and I told him, this is the standard. Every single client, you have to have these things in writing before it was state law. So my last team meeting, right? I'm like going around the room. So training on it. This is required. It's a standard. People are freaking out. And I said, Evan, stand up. He's like, yeah. I go, I'm curious. You started, 90 days ago. How many of these do you have signed? 14.
Wow.
14 over the holidays. And I had agents in the room that had never had it signed, right? So say that it's the same thing.
Yes.
In terms of compliance for whatever you want. And he's like, and everyone's asking him questions. Like my senior agents are going, how did you do it? What did you say? And like, were people saying no? And by the way, Matt, with compensation, not just signed, but with compensation on the buyer side.
Yep.
And he's like, no, everyone, what do you mean? I just do it and they sign it. It's great.
Well, and dude, there's so much there. It's like now that the OG agent that was maybe resistant to change is asking a brand new agent, how did you do it? The OG agent wants to change now, isn't forced to change. And how do you think that new agent feels when a top producer, an OG agent, is asking them for their advice? That agent's not going anywhere, right? Like that agent is like, I found my home. I feel significant. I'm actually contributing to this environment. This is the place I want to be.
It's that I mean, these are like the nuances that are fun, as a leader, that we can geek out over these stories all day long as leaders. Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure. Follow Matt, say that domain again to get those funnels, because that will increase.
It's 3 all spelled out, THREE, 3recruitingfunnels.com.
3recruitingfunnels.com, and also follow them on All or Nothing podcast. Matt, pleasure.
Nick, it was great as always, my friend. Appreciate you.